Hey, hello everyone. Long day, full of outreach. Been walking in a parade, and heart is just really full right now. Love our team and love the relationships we're building in our city. So my hope is to actually give y'all my initial post early enough so you can actually respond to something I posted, Marcus. So I do want to apologize for being late in the past weeks. But yeah, for this talk, I want to walk us through an example that I actually lived out. If you didn't know, Manna Church in Newport News, we actually were the leading church in a church merger. And so Tabernacle Baptist Church, which was a Southern Baptist church, merged with us. And so I want to share some of the things I learned to also inform this hypothetical scenario. So I want to focus on updating worship practices to include a blended style of worship, incorporating both traditional hymns and contemporary worship music in the same service. And I chose this because what I see in my city and even around the nation, many Southern Baptist churches hold tightly to traditional hymns with the piano, with the robes, with the organ accompaniment, and younger generations, I'm a millennial, and I would say my generation and the generation behind me, we don't always necessarily connect with that. We connect better with modern worship styles. And I believe if left unaddressed, this can create a generational divide within a congregation. I think that will then hinder your outreach efforts to unchurched families. And so my goal would be to lead this change in a way that honors God, but it also honors the church's heritage and also embraces new practices to help us reach more people to fulfill the Great Commission. So when it comes to how do you guide this change, I actually would draw from Yoke's discussion on ethical leadership, particularly the idea of transformational leadership being grounded in ethical principles. And, this class has been very surreal and emotional for me in some ways because I'm doing a lot of learning from Dr. Crowther. And one of the things he labeled me, he said, "Riley, you're a transformational leader." I can still hear his voice echo today. And the reason why I wanted to grab that principle, I think it emphasizes, yes, that the ethical leaders, we model integrity, but we also inspire values. And I think what I had to do in this merger and what I would do here hypothetically is prioritizing the long-term good for the community over our personal gain. One thing I love to say to the church is, are you here on preference or are you here on purpose? And so this isn't about simply relying on charisma. It's about guiding people toward what is right and maintaining transparency and fairness. One aspect of Yoke's, he stresses the importance of ethical role modeling. And so leaders, we don't just get to tell people what's right. We got to show it. We have to model it. And so in this case, what I did was I intentionally participated in both traditional and contemporary styles of worship. One, to demonstrate that both were valid. Like, I didn't want people to think, oh, this is dated or archaic and washed, or God speaks more through hymns than he does through Hillsong. I think I wanted people to grasp that both expressions really did glorify God. And my hope is to inspire others to see worship is about God's worthiness, not about my preference. Again, the hypothetical scenario, I would also lean on the servant leadership principles we've been discussing. Yoke connects ethical leadership by listening first, seeking input from the older generation and younger families, making sure that no one feels ignored or unseen. I think this change in a church setting has to be pastored before it can be organized. Some supporting text, I just think of Philippians 2, 3-4, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility. So again, that's the posture. Count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you not look only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. And so this verse is a Manna staple, but I think it reminds us of how ethical leadership requires humility and prioritizing the community's well-being. I also think of Psalm 96 verse 1, which says, "Sing to the Lord a new song, So this shows us that God delights in both new and old expressions of worship. So I think the ethical responsibility of a church leader is to create a space for the whole body to be able to worship together in unity. Beyond Yoke, I want to bring in James Kozies and Barry Posner from the Leadership Challenge. They argue that leaders must model the way and inspire a shared vision. And so in this scenario, that means not just announcing a new style of worship. It doesn't mean launching a traditional and a contemporary service. It really does mean embodying that. What does it look like to embody a blended perspective on worship? Sharing stories, again, leading from your voice, of how blended worship unifies other churches, and even painting a picture of what that could look like, inviting the congregation to imagine a healthier future together. And so just some practical things that we did is we would medley, like we would weave some Amazing Grace into something contemporary, or we'd have a contemporary song that builds to a moment where it's like this boom, a cappella hymn moment. And it was dope. On the practical, ethical side, or I guess maybe, how would I phrase this? Maybe some ethical challenges. Those are going to arise. Those did arise for us. I think the biggest objection likely comes from those long-term members who feel that this is compromising. We had some folks, to include one of the instrumentalists, who were entrenched in, doubled down, assuming that hymns were more sacred than the rock music. Sometimes this view of tradition can feel like we're disrespecting the heritage of the church. And from that perspective, contemporary music can feel like departure from reverence. My ethical responsibility as a leader is to honor those concerns without dismissing them. And so I address this challenge by creating intentional listening sessions. And so I gathered with the old choir and the new team, and we talked and we wrestled things out. And it really gave an opportunity to explain that we weren't just removing hymns, but we were adding hymns. We were expanding the ways we worship. Another safeguard would be to implement change gradually. And so we did start with, again, I was trying to secure the merger. So it's like, okay, 2 hymns, then a contemporary song. And then we phased to 1 hymn, 2 contemporary songs. And then we weaved in the medley to kind of make it all flow. Yoke emphasizes that ethical leaders handle objections with fairness and transparency, not coercion. So you don't want to manipulate. People feel that. So I, like I said, will continue to communicate the reasons for the change, reaching for the next gen and creating unity across age groups, and being faithful to the scripture's call to sing a new song. So just to put a bow on everything, I think leading worship change in the Southern Baptist Church requires ethical leadership rooted in humility, that servant-hearted listening and role modeling, drawing from Yoke's principles, supported by scripture. My approach would be to bring balance, both honoring the past while preparing for the future. And so the question I would submit is, how do you think a leader can discern the differences between change that truly serves the mission of the church versus one that simply caters to cultural preferences? I think that question is timely, just with the climate politically that we find the Western church, particularly in America, in. But I would also submit that in this case. Looking forward to hear your responses. Be here soon. Peace.